South Africa's labour and immigration laws are very clear when it comes to employing foreign nationals and local citizens. 60% of the labour force has to consist of local citizens. The approach that the Department of Home Affairs is taking is two-pronged, with education on one hand.
So we're going to conduct inspections, impose penalties on those companies, because what we would want is that companies in South Africa, operating in South Africa, must employ South Africans.
The industry's largest and biggest employer body, which represents a little over 70% of employers, says it doesn't know how many companies are meeting those minimum requirements.
There has been concerns from the citizens of the country to say that, there has been lots of people that are not from South Africa that are working, within restaurants and lodges and so forth and so on. So we need to look at those concerns. Whether they are true or their perception, it's for us to look at them, and then we need to have some numbers through research to quantify what the size of the problem is.
Gigaba says it's about prioritizing South Africans looking for work.
Because there's no other country where these people must be expected to get employment. In other countries, they have prioritized their own nationals. But in South Africa, we do something different. It cannot be allowed.
The Federated Hospitality Association of Southern Africa, which represents about 3,000 establishments, wants to do the right thing.
When it comes to our members, what we want for them is to ensure that they comply with the laws of the country. This is not about, whether the person is it's not South African or is illegal or so forth and so on. No, we just want to make sure that the rules of the country, in terms of how the employment should be conducted, our members follow.
As South Africa struggles to deal with its unemployment rate, it seems that the hospitality sector is the first area that's being targeted. Is this a case of South Africa first? We'll just have to wait and see. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
Well, Angelo Coppola now joins us in Johannesburg with more insight. As always, you're welcome to the show, Angelo. Now, of course, this is coming at a sensitive time with, of course, President Trump's immigration policies. Give us a rough idea of how widespread the practice of hiring over 40% of migrant workers is in South Africa.
Well, that's part of the problem. FEDASA, the Hospitality Industry Association, simply doesn't know. And Gigaba, on the other hand, is working from a number of complaints from citizens. Some unions and government departments are also voicing their concerns. Remember, though, that Home Affairs is not suggesting that all migrant workers are undocumented or illegally in the country. It's just that the law is very clear about that 60% threshold. On the other hand, it hasn't been applied, as far as I'm aware, until the news broke today. Gigaba did confirm that they will also look at the construction, the mining and the agricultural sectors. It's early days yet, but the minister appears to be cracking the whip, as it were. And we'll have to wait and see when that data does come out from the hospitality sector. The mining sector probably have a better handle on what their numbers look like, but it's still early days, Ucha.
And Angelo, what are the implications, or what will be the implications of this, of South Africa imposing those penalties and, of course, the inspection on the guilty parties? What are we going to see happen to its migrant labor force and certainly the business sector in South Africa?
Well, Gigaba used the ZSP, or the Zimbabwe Special Permit, which expires in December, as an example. And we were told today that there are hundreds of thousands of Zimbabwean immigrants in South Africa. And he also told us that he doesn't want to see any of those Zimbabwean migrants on the streets out of work. He was at pains to suggest that he has to be very sensitive about how he's going to deal with the situation. That's just one group. There are also the Lesotho citizens and their special dispensation. Meanwhile, Gigaba says he's going to wait for the hospitality sector to provide that accurate, usable data. He's also mentioned that the mining sector have approached his department about their migrant labor situation, requiring some help there. Does it mean we're going to see more unemployed migrants in place of South Africans and South Africans taking their jobs? Well, that remains to be seen, but it does appear that's the potential scenario.
And Angelo, could we see this have a wider impact on South Africa's immigration policies, which of course we know have caused some friction between countries such as Kenya and Nigeria in the past?
Well, Gigaba did spend some time referring obliquely to what was happening in America with Trump and that immigration lock that he put on those 7 countries. But he's quick to point out that South Africans who can do the job should be employed. here. It's up to the companies to employ those South African citizens if they qualify to do so. He did remind us that there are exceptions, and his department entertains this type of request on a regular basis. But local companies have to be very careful now, because it appears that the Department of Home Affairs are going to be watching to make sure that companies don't bridge that 60% local employment quota. That's because they'll be watching very, very carefully. Increased friction, well, it's unclear when it comes to those immigrants with no paperwork. But people legitimately looking for work in South Africa from the rest of the continent might have a door closed in their faces, unfortunately. But yeah.
Well, thank you so much, as always, Angelo, for those insights. Of course, Angelo Coppola joining us there in Johannesburg.